the 80s, Japan would be influenced highly by jazz fusion. And there was mainly two bands that were introducing the genre to the nation. The first one was The Square. The second was Cassiopeia. And members from both bands would collaborate together in future projects. The band named The Square was formed in 1976 by guitarist Masahiro Ando at Meiji University. A year later, in 1977, Takeshi Ito joined as saxophone and flute player of the band. The studio debut of the band was in 1978 at the release of their album called Lucky Summer Lady. When the band originally started, the band had a rather sporadic lineup. Members would be replaced over several years, which eventually brought forth the members that would make the group iconic in Japan. About a decade later, the band already had a hit of their own. The song titled Truth, found in their 1987 album of the same name. The song would eventually become the band's anthem, and it would also be played for the Japanese TV station Fuji Television for the introduction of the broadcast to the Formula One Grand Prix from 1987 to 2006. The band was widely successful, and even had a concert in the United States. They are considered J-Fusion pioneers, short for Japanese Fusion. The Square changed their name in 1989 to T-Square. It was prompted by their activity in the United States, but the newly formed T-Square would have another change right around the corner. With the band name changing to T-Square being one of the major changes of the band, they would soon introduce a new member who had a lot of experience. Enter Masato Honda, a saxophonist who debuted with T-Square as a supporting sax player in their album T-Square Live, featuring the Formula One Grand Prix theme, which was released in 1990. Honda was a skilled multi-instrumentalist, presenting skills with brass instruments, most woodwind instruments, and the guitar. This meant that out of all the members of The Square, past and present, Honda had the broadest range of experience with his compositions, since he had awareness of virtually every instrument. Let it also be known that prior to his debut in T-Square, Masato Honda had played for Toshiki Karumatsu, a famous Japanese singer and songwriter. He also played the solo to the instrumental named Tank, which is the opening theme of Cowboy Bebop. He had also supported legendary Japanese fusion bands such as Yoshitaka Mihara's band and the Katsumi Hori Project, and these were only some of his feats. In 1991, Takeshi Ito left the group to pursue his solo career for a number of years. As the remaining saxophonist, Honda stepped up and became the new lead saxophone player of T-Square. With Honda at the forefront, T-Square would soon be pushed to its greatest heights to date. The band's debut with Masato Honda as the frontman began with their 1991 album named New S. The album art was a white template with the T-Square logo, perhaps to represent the new start of the band. The irony of this white template, however, is that although it was a boring album art, it would present itself in a very stark contrast to the first track of the album. Honda's style is very syncopated and relies on breaks in the 16th note grid, and is also very lively and full of high-pitched notes. Honda's style will be established in Megalith, the very first track of the new album, and his style kicked the band into high gears, requiring a higher level of coordination and proficiency from all players. To their luck, however, T-Square had a good lineup, with Hirotaka Izumi, Hiroyuki Noritake, Mitsuru Suto, and founder Masahiro Ando, all well-equipped and well-trained musicians who adapted quickly to the new style that Honda brought forth. In the following year, the band would release their next album. Impressive was released in 1992, featuring the song titled Traffic Jam, which clearly has Honda's influence. Throughout the majority of the 90s, Honda's influence can be heard in multiple albums of T-Square. The examples are as follows. In 1997, at the release of Blue and Red, Honda would then leave the group to pursue his own solo career, leaving Takahiro Miyazaki, a Berklee alum, to remain as the main saxophonist for about 3 years. Honda's career would continue to flourish in the rest of the 90s and throughout the 2000s.
And look at that, Senna now right with Alain Prost on lap 14.
The arrival of Masato Honda's energetic style was perfect timing during the 90s. Formula One was becoming a popular sport during that time period. The Formula One scene was evolving as technological advances had allowed cars to reach greater speeds. Drivers had also become much more competitive, especially Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost. And it was known that Senna and Prost's rivalry was very serious. With the need for speed being highly appreciated by the band, they gave birth to an album in 1992, F1 Grand Prix World. It is the only album from T-Square that has not been streamed on any online services. It featured homemade themes for Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna, and of course, Truth, the F1 theme. Following Senna's tragic death in 1994, the band dedicated the album Solitude in the same year. The album would give a passionate and sentimental send-off to the Brazilian racing hero. Honda's time in the band as main player would be a short one in comparison to Ito's, who would return in 2000 and would remain the main saxophone player to this day in 2023. But despite the short number of years that he was in the band, T-Square was at their most influential state when Honda was at the forefront. While at the beginning T-Square was more disco-like given the influence of city pop, Honda was the person that phased them out of that stage into the more technical jazz scene. Honda brought forth a lot of unspoken legacy. While many jazz fusion bands did influence the jazz fusion arena in general in Japan, none have been as explosive and technical as T-Square's contribution in the 90s during Honda's time as frontman. Honda was a catalyst that brought forth the modern Japanese jazz fusion era. It is also probable that T-Square may have had an indirect influence over certain video game music. However, it is a highly speculated topic as there is a lack of information on the internet. The true mystery is that although video game music generally was inspired by jazz fusion, it is hard to tell which bands exactly had influenced which franchises. Although Honda had raised the bar for Japanese jazz fusion, one other band that had initiated 1 year after Honda's joining of T-Square would provide another revolution to the already changing genre of jazz fusion. And this second band, this second pillar, would one day have its own reputation etched into the history of Nintendo.